Do Aussie viewers want yet another streaming service from Foxtel?
And will footy and Ultra HD be a winner? Vertical Hold is proudly sponsored by Netcom, taking Australian technology to the global market. Welcome to Vertical Hold, behind the tech news, where we talk to Australia's leading technology journalists to get the stories behind the news of the week. I'm Adam Turner, and I'm joined as always by Alex Kidman, a man who's working on his pre-season fitness but still insists on maintaining the charade that he's not into sports ball. Alex, who's your tip for the Premiers this year?
Look, I'm glad you asked me, Adam. I've given this a lot of thought, and if any of the listeners like a punt, my red hot tip, I think it's time. I think they're due. I think the Washington Generals are finally going to put one over on the Globetrotters. It's their year and they're going all the way.
He called it. He called it early. We're also joined once again this week by a man who makes no secret of his love of footy and all things sport, Tech Guide editor and former Rabbitohs player, Stephen Fennick. Stephen, welcome back to the show.
Great to be back, guys. Thank you for allowing me to join you to discuss football and sport on a tech podcast. I don't get an opportunity to do that very often, so thanks for having me.
Well, we all know how much Alex loves to talk sport.
Clearly.
Yes, absolutely. We've had a long chat many a time, Alex and I, about the ins and outs of sport, haven't we, mate?
many times.
So this week we're talking about Foxtel's move to broadcast the AFL and the NRL in 4K this year, along with talk of yet another Foxtel streaming service, this time dedicated to drama. But first, over to the news desk. Alex, what's new in tech?
Facebook is going private. No, really. Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg says that he intends to set private communications on the popular platform to be encrypted by default. Working towards implementing end-to-end encryption for all private communications is the right thing to do, Zuckerberg said on a post on his Facebook profile. The future of communication will increasingly shift to private, encrypted services where people can be confident what they say to each other stays secure and their messages and content won't stick around forever, he said. This is the future I hope we can help bring about. No word yet on whether or not Facebook will be watching those communications, of course.
We're one step closer to a world without passwords after an agreement on an official password-free login standard for the web. Web authentication, or WebAuthn, has been the de facto standard for a while, but now it's official after an agreement between the World Wide Web Consortium and the FIDO Alliance, FIDO standing for Fast Identity Online. The standard supports USB security keys and biometrics such as fingerprints and facial recognition. It also works with nearby devices like phones and smartwatches. The technology is already built into a wide range of devices and browsers. The real challenge is going to be convincing websites to get on board.
The battles between Huawei and the US government have intensified, with the Chinese networking and telecommunications provider announcing that it will sue the US government over its ban on buying Huawei products and services. Huawei has essentially zero sales in the US as a result of the ban, and it's launched legal action in the state of Texas to have it overturned. Meanwhile, Huawei's chief financial officer, Meng Wanzhou, the daughter of the company's founder, is facing extradition proceedings in Canada to the US, where she's facing bank fraud and charges of violating US trade sanctions against Iran.
Gadget lovers are in mourning this week with the death of Jibo, a social robot who's gone to join Sony's original Aibo in that big server room in the sky. The company behind Jibo shut down late last year, despite a successful Kickstarter campaign and a healthy round of venture capital investment. The benchtop robot's final words to its owners were, "I want to say I've really enjoyed our time together," after explaining that the imminent shutdown of its servers would see most of its functionality permanently crippled. So, Alex, Huawei isn't holding back. What are they doing now?
They're getting the lawyers involved. And
they're lawyering up.
Yeah, and getting the lawyers involved, it often gets kind of messy. It's an interesting sales tactic, I got to say. You're not buying our stuff, we'd better bring in the lawyers. But if you're Huawei, and if they're as innocent as they claim they are, maybe they've got a point. Maybe the ban is an unfair one. Equally speaking, it's the law, and as we know, when the law and technology collide, it usually takes years for anything to be resolved. There is this side issue of the founder of Huawei's daughter being held in Canada since I think it's December on potential fraud and trade sanction violation charges, and that's got an interesting angle to it as well, because the trade sanction stuff is very similar to what very nearly brought ZTE down last year, because they were involved, definitively, they admitted they were involved in dealings with banned nation states, and so they were blocked from accessing US technology, which more or less meant they couldn't produce stuff. They've sort of started to come crawling back into the market, not so much in a handset way, but they still do a lot of networking gear. Huawei could face the same kind of thing, but it's yet more in the kind of war of words that seems to be hitting between Huawei and an awful lot of places, because, as a lot of our regular listeners would know, they're also banned from providing 5G equipment, even though their networking equipment already sits in, for example, a lot of Vodafone's network as it is.
But so the ban in the US is different to the ban in Australia. Like, we don't have a ban on selling Huawei handsets, do we?
No, we don't. They're free to sell handsets here as long as they like, and they can sell 5G handsets. So the upcoming Galaxy Mate X, which we discussed on the show last week, they will be free to sell here when they choose to do so, or at least at the moment they will. I think it's an interesting one, though, even just from that Australian context of, well, if the US government folds, and that's not a given, of course, what does Huawei do here? Does it say, right, well, we've proven our case in the US, hey, Australian government, how about you let us in on some of that business as well?
I was chatting to John Lord. I think I think that's his name, the chairman of Huawei Australia, and he said that there's a lot of the pressure from their ban on the 5G, pitching the 5G networks, came from the US. So if there is an ease in the ban on them, or the pressure on them in the US, then it's sure to flow, he feels anyway, to Australia. But on them suing the government to crack the market to be able to sell handsets there, I think that's a no-brainer. They're going to have to spend the money to see if they can get in the door in the US. It's going to be a massive market, and there's been a lot of high-profile tech journalists, like YouTubers, that have been talking about Huawei products and lamenting the fact that they are not for sale in the US. So if that door opens for them, then it's going to be a pretty lucrative one.
How much do you think it would hurt Huawei to not be in the first round of 5G handset sales in a major market like America?
It'd be significant. The first round of devices, that'd be you'd obviously, if you're a company that's got a 5G handset, you want to be in that group. Just like there's companies that want to be in the first round that are available in Australia. It is you want to be one of the leading companies there, but I think, though, better late than never, though, is still an option if they can get a 5G device in the market. And with the stunning, how they impressed Barcelona. I think they stole the Mobile World Congress with the Huawei Mate X, which is also a 5G device. I think just the sheer demand for that, if it gets under a certain price, of course, but that was a very impressive product. And I think if American customers think if they can get their hands on that device on a 5G network, I think there'll be a lot of people asking the question.
It's also a bit of a global play as well, though, because there's a bit of pressure on Huawei in markets like the UK and Germany, where they're not explicitly blocked yet, but their governments have said, oh, we're looking into these allegations. And you're right, Steve, they are, or the information for that appears to have come from US intelligence services from the reports I've read. So Huawei will want to kind of fend that off, because they're quite big in the broader European market as well. So in a lot of ways, it's Huawei being defensive. You can flip the story around, of course, and say, well, they are subject to Chinese law, and there are these long-term allegations around them. And, I have no specific evidence one way or the other on that. But I think it's going to be a really interesting one to see how and where it plays out, and how quickly, in a sense, because for 5G especially, as you said, better late than never maybe, but you want to be in that first space, especially considering Huawei does all of its own stuff its own way, where almost everyone's using Qualcomm 5G modems. They've got their own thing. It's Balong 5000 off the top of my
That's
head.
right.
And so they've got this whole infrastructure there that they want to be able to deploy as widely as possible.
Oh, for sure. And you bring up a good point about Europe, and they're in the handset space. they're dominant. There are some countries where they're number one. I think they're number one in Italy and Portugal. There's many regions where Huawei is way out in front of Samsung and Apple. So they'd be fiercely protective of that territory. And if on the 5G side of things, that they want to be involved in that story as well. So I'll be curious to see how this one plays out.
So it almost feels like I'm lighting a stick of dynamite here, but Foxtel, 4K, Sport, Adam, Stephen, go.
So, Stephen, 4K's been a thing for a while. Foxtel's really concentrated on sport. Do you think that's a smart play? And why are we talking about it now? What's coming up?
Yeah, well, they've doubled down after a really successful cricket season. I'm not sure how much of the cricket you caught in 4K, but it was glorious to watch it.
Yeah,
It was
looked good.
great detail. But yeah, but I think the Fox Sports' bread and butter is the winter sports with the NRL and the AFL, and I'm really pleased that they're making a move here to finally broadcast in 4K. It was the first question I asked at the 4K, the launch of the IQ4 last year, to Patrick Delaney was, will there be games in 4K in the NRL 2019 season? And I was delighted with his answer.
So when does it kick off, and how many games are we going to see?
Well, it's going to kick off on March 15, so that is the first Friday night game. So Newcastle Knights are playing the Cronulla Sharks. So I suspect from the games in the early rounds that they've nominated, it's going to be the games that Foxtel in the NRL anyway, that they exclusively broadcast, because the situation is now there are Foxtel broadcasts every game. They share some matches with Channel 9, like the Friday night game, the 7:30 match. So I think that the 4K games will be the games that Foxtel can broadcast exclusively, because it does involve bringing in their own cameras, and it's a whole new workflow for them to broadcast in glorious 4K.
And then the week after the AFL kicks off?
That's right. Yeah, there's two weeks, two games, one after the other. So on March 22nd, I think, or 24th, is Melbourne playing Port Adelaide, and then the day after, the Gold Coast Suns are playing as well in 4K. So they're lucky they got two games in the first round. NRL, we're going to be happy with just having one match in per round. Hopefully that'll pick up to maybe two, possibly even three games. The Foxtel on a Saturday have what they call Super Saturday, because Channel 9 don't broadcast league on a Saturday. So the Super Saturday has three games in a row. So it's got a 3:30, a 5:30, and a 7:30 kickoff, which in my household is called the marriage wrecker, because I'm just watching all the games and not talking to my wife. I'm just watching all the football. So if they can put one or two of those games in 4K, I'll be very pleased.
Now, but it's not just NRL and AFL, is it?
At the moment, well, they've got also the motorsport. They did a great job with Bathurst. I think that was the very first 4K.
That was
sport.
the first one.
Yeah, back in November. So they've got the cricket, but they're also going to be doing some rugby, the Super Rugby, the Wallabies matches as well. There's some women's football. I think the A-League games are also going to be earmarked for 4K. So exciting times. If you've invested in a 4K TV, and let's face it, you can't not buy a 4K TV. There's not many people buying HD TVs nowadays. So this is exciting if you're a sports fan and you've got a Foxtel account and you're happy to watch in 4K. It'll really showcase just how clear and immersive it is. It's going to be like being at the game. That's how clear it's going to be. It's very exciting.
And one of the things that was holding them back last year was the fact that we're still waiting for the cameras and stuff to come into the country. But if they're doing NRL, AFL, supercars all on the same weekend, some A-League, Super Rugby, the women's, they've obviously got enough gear to be in several places at once.
Absolutely right. Yeah, I think the summer of cricket for them was their test case over the summer. So I think they had multiple cameras. We're talking, I think, about 20 cameras or more at the ground, and broadcasting in, I think, up to 60 frames per second. So you can tell with a game like cricket and even motorsport, that added detail, especially with fast moving objects like a car in a race. There's a lot less blur because of that added detail. And once we see that in the NRL, I think you'll be able to watch the action and have less of that ghosting and blur that came with watching it in HD.
Do you reckon that that's more important than the resolution? Because from from my experience watching 4K Bathurst and cricket on a 65-inch OLED, I could see the difference, but you had to have an eye for detail to
Yeah.
spot it. In terms of the actual fine detail, it was a bit more in the movement.
Yeah, I think the bigger the TV, I think the bigger difference. But you're just remember the customer that's buying a 4K TV nowadays. They're looking at these larger screens. We're talking 75 inches and above for 4K TVs, and any guy will take 1/10 of a second to agree to buy a bigger TV when it comes to watching sport. So
I
it's
just
going to
think
look
that's
great.
madness, though. Unless you've got the house, unless you've got the room for it, I reckon that 65 inches is about the average. I would recommend against anyone going above that unless they're really sure they've got
Well,
the room for it. But
I've had a
maybe
lot of
sports
my
fans all think bigger are
Oh
better.
yeah, I think sports fans, their brains are wired a little bit differently, mate. I think the bigger the better. I know a lot of my
Yeah.
readers and listeners are very interested in these large screen TVs. They're looking
Yeah.
at brands like Hisense and Samsung, all these great brands, LG, and they're all asking the same question. I'm after a bigger TV. What do you recommend? And so
Yeah.
the demand is there.
The
So
elephant in the room here, though, if I can butt in, and I actually have a question here, is
he who knows nothing about sport and doesn't want to talk.
because this
Please,
is a
go ahead.
because this is a technology question, because this is a technology podcast. Just to get us back on track, is you've got to have the IQ4 box. It's
Yes.
that
Yes, you do.
delivery of Foxtel only. Has Foxtel actually said why? Because 4K ultimately is a data stream. And
Yep.
I'm just curious as to if I'm sitting on a decent enough NBN connection, which personally I'm not, and obviously sport's not my thing, but lots of people, it is.
Mhm.
If I'm sitting on that decent connection, but I don't have the IQ4 box, why can't I have 4K?
Well, that's a good question. I think that Foxtel now, if you want an IQ4 and moving forward, they're going to transition existing IQ customers to satellite. I think that's a way they can guarantee a similar experience for any customer. Like it is unfortunate that if it was like as you suggested through a decent broadband connection, the experience wouldn't be the same for all customers because my connection might be great, but your connection might be rubbish. So it's going to really put that experience at risk. I think they've pulled the right rein here by having it piped in through the satellite. So that way, no matter where you live, no matter what your broadband quality is, you're going to get the same experience across the board. So I think they've made the right move there.
But satellite can be variable too, can't it?
It can, yeah, satellite. I've had a satellite connection at my place for 15 years through Foxtel. And the only problem I've ever had with satellite is if there's a sudden heavy downpour. So if it rains really heavily, I lose a satellite connection for a minute or so, and then it's back again. So that's really been the only downtime I've experienced with a satellite connection.
Yeah. Unlike DSL, which can crap itself for 3 days after rain.
There you go. So you answered my
But it never
question.
rains on the footy,
Yeah.
right?
No, I think it's purely a business decision from well, maybe not purely, but primarily a business decision. If you want 4K, then pony up and pay for the real, get the full IQ4 box at home. If you
Yeah.
want to take the cheap version and watch it online, fine, but we're going to withhold 4K from you. That's the way I see it.
But the advantage that Foxtel has here is it's sport. Is these that you can't watch that anywhere else but on Foxtel, and them having this in 4K is going to make that an even more compelling package. People are considering IQ4 purely to watch the NRL and the AFL in 4K.
So what kind of pressure does this put on Channel 9, Channel 7, the free-to-air broadcasters?
Yeah, I don't think a lot. I can't see free-to-air broadcasting in 4K anytime soon. So I
Not
think
me either.
Foxtel, I think, are doing the right thing here and pressing the advantage by having their matches in 4K. I can't see Channel 9 competing there, but Channel 9, the way that the game is set up and the rights, how the rights are distributed by the NRL, Channel 9, they decide which are the prime matches, so that they choose the 7:30 match, they choose all these different times for the game. So they've still got the power in picking the better matches that they can broadcast on Channel 9, and that then forces Foxtel to play that same game in HD. So as I said earlier, Foxtel will only have 4K if it's exclusively broadcast on Foxtel and not on Channel 9 simultaneously.
It's also a situation, Steve, where we're a bit behind some other markets, and the UK is the one that I kind of know about, where they've done a lot of 4K sport, obviously the soccer there, but a lot of the other sports there through through Sky, which is of course
Mhm.
still it all comes back to News Limited in the end.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think that is there a reason? Again, sports totally isn't my thing, as you know, but is there a reason why we've waited for those things where it's not you've got to get the cameras, you've got to shoot the local matches? I get that. Where this content's been available, but they haven't been showing
Mhm.
it because I would imagine they're going to be showing F1. I think you said, and I would imagine
Mhm.
that's not Foxtel sending their 4K cameras all around the globe. That's Foxtel perhaps having cameras in what is it, Melbourne? I think
Yeah.
the F1. Shows how much I know. And apologies to the F1 fans out there, but uh, they're just taking a 4K stream from someone else, aren't they?
Yeah, they are in some of those cases. But in terms of the decision for them to pull the trigger this year on 4K, I think has a lot to do with the uptake of 4K TVs. I don't think Foxtel wanted to launch earlier because there are a lot of people out there that only have HD TVs. I know we all know that the uptake of 4K TVs is actually quite high, but I think Foxtel just wanted to wait till that sort of they passed that point where there were more people than ever that had Fox 4K televisions before deciding to launch their 4K broadcast this year.
And you're also someone who's an ex-player, of course. As a player, do you think 4K is a concern? I mean, can you sledge someone and worry about the lip reading going on, or
Well,
put the elbow in and get it spotted really obviously?
yeah, well, that's a good question. I think the advantage of 4K is what people first assume is the resolution, which is right, and you are going to see the warts and all look of the game, but also too the decisions on the video referees. It's going to be a lot clearer. They're going to have a lot more resolution to look at to make their decisions. So that's good. That could have if there is a stray elbow that wasn't a HD compatible, it might be a 4K elbow that is seen a lot more clearly with that resolution. But you're right that could be a concern for players, not the way they look, but if this added detail could expose something that may have got through to the keeper in HD. But I think the other advantage too, we should just point out it here, is that it's also not just the resolution, but also the audio quality too from the 4K broadcast is going to be improved as well. So if you've got the right setup at home, not only will it look amazing and feel like you're at the game, it'll also sound like you're at the game too, which sound really plays a big part when watching sport as well. Especially when you hear the crowd noise, it really immerses you into the match.
So, Alex, we're back on familiar ground now. We're going to talk about Foxtel dramas, not Foxtel sport. Now, there's talk of Foxtel spinning out yet another streaming service to follow up on KO, the sports streaming service. Stephen, what can we expect?
Yeah, I think the KO is a sports service, as you said. That is, I know that a lot of people who want to subscribe to Foxtel. I think a high percentage they want to do it because of the sport. And
Yeah.
when you just want to get a Foxtel service for the sport, you can't just get the sport. You have to tie in all these extra packages. That's why KO's been really successful, and also too being able to watch four different streams at the same time, which I try to replicate on numerous TVs in my place. But being able to do it on one service, that's exciting. Not sure how well the drama service would do. I know there's a lot of competition from Netflix and Stan and all these other services, and Foxtel obviously want to leverage their tentpole shows like Game of Thrones to entice viewers as well. Not sure how successful a drama streaming service would be in the long run.
So why do you think they want to do it then? Like, as you say, with KO, I can see the technical appeal for. I didn't really get why they want a sports service until I tested it out, and I could see,
Yeah.
I can see why sports fans would think it's worth watching it through this, as you say, the picture in picture and other things. How's this going to be better watching Game of Thrones through whatever this service is rather than Foxtel now?
Yeah, I just think Foxtel are feeling the pressure. They're feeling the pressure from Netflix and these other services, and I think that they want to stay relevant. So if a customer doesn't want to pony up $100 a month to watch Game of Thrones and get everything that goes with it, then they need an alternative. We had this issue years ago when we were talking about Game of Thrones being the most pirated show ever because people weren't willing to pay big money to Foxtel to watch just one show. They brought in Foxtel now, and that's been successful. But if you need to have more of those water cooler type shows that Netflix are famous for to rest on this service, to be the foundation of this service, and priced at a way, because that's why KO is successful, because it's affordable. And it needs to be, this the new drama service, if it continues, it needs to be priced attractively as well, because they need to compete with the $20 a month for Netflix and the $10 a month for Stan and these other services.
But KO is only affordable because they put up the price of Foxtel Now again. Before KO came along, Foxtel Now had got rid of that thing where you have to buy the entry-level package before you can pay for the stuff you really want. And then they brought that back, which made Foxtel Now more expensive to make KO look more attractive. Are they just softening us up for the day where they're actually going to get rid of Foxtel Now, which some people are saying they might,
Yeah.
and
I think
this spread
that's
of
inevitable.
services instead?
I think it's absolutely inevitable that if they go ahead with what they're calling Project Jupiter, as reported, this drama service, that Foxtel Now's days are numbered, because Foxtel wants as big a share of the Australian television viewing market, video viewing market, if you like, as it can get. And it's been around a long time. It's long past reached that kind of saturation point of being, oh wow, pay TV, that's a big new thing. And I mean, we've all got enough miles on the clock to have watched that evolve. And as such, it's got to hit both, obviously, that large mass of Australians who like sport, but that also that segment, like myself, for example, who aren't necessarily going to pay for sport, but who are potentially interested in drama and comedy and the other things that they do. You slice sport out of that, and then you've got the drama and everything else left. I haven't read anything that suggests that it's purely going to be a drama play. It is presumably Foxtel minus the sport, Foxtel minus KO, effectively, because Foxtel Now carries almost everything that kind of full fat Foxtel does.
Yeah.
In terms of the kind of multi-screen features, I don't think anyone's going to watch 4 dramas at once, but they could do the kind of stuff that you see, for example, with Amazon Prime Video, where they've got that feature which they call X-Ray, where you can bring up kind of little fast facts about what you're watching, or get kind of instant detail on an actor on screen.
That's novelty crap that's been around for decades, and I don't think anybody cares about it. I might be wrong, but we've seen that for years.
You're not 100% wrong in the novelty aspect, but I don't think it's a non-selling point. I think it's we've got this, and hey, this is there as well.
Yeah, I think now I agree though. Having these new features, it might seem a novelty, but I think for this to be a success for Foxtel, they need a point of difference, and it's not not just the programs that they choose, because at the end of the day, it's the programs and the shows you can watch on certain services that attract you to those services. It's not because you're a fan of Foxtel; it's because you're a fan of what they're broadcasting. So if they've got these other features, these novelty features, as you call them, that could be just enough of a point of difference to make them compete in this growing market.
I'm just worried that this is a slippery slope, and they're going to break Foxtel Now up into sections again. So you'll have to pay $30 to watch sport, $30 to watch drama, and then they spin off the kids stuff into something else. They spin off the documentaries into something else. And next thing you know, you're back where you started paying $100 a month to watch Foxtel. And that's when people will just go back and steal it. Cheap content, available content was the best way to fight piracy. You go back the other way, people go back to BitTorrent.
Yeah, I agree. I think I don't think that Foxtel, the entire package, if you're a Foxtel subscriber, you're happy with getting all the channels and paying everything $100 a month, whatever it comes to. I think that service will continue, and the growth of its 4K content will also continue. So you'll be able to watch more 4K movies, more sport, more everything in 4K. I don't think that's going anywhere. If you're happy watching a service that is, if you're not a sports fan but you love drama, or if you're not a drama fan and you like sport, then I think that those choices is what they want to give customers. So they're trying to make all the people happy with all of their services. So I think that kind of catch-all, they're trying to not miss out on any customer by offering these multiple services.
Well, that just about wraps up yet another episode of Vertical Hold. Now, as always, we love to get your feedback on the show, so if you've got a strong opinion on Foxtel or on sport, feel free to comment via Twitter or the Vertical Hold Facebook page. Thanks again to Stephen for joining us once again for the show.
Thanks a lot, guys. It's been great being on the show again. Really enjoyed the chat.
And thanks, everyone, for listening. We're on a big push this year to reach more listeners, so it helps if you jump on your podcasting platform of choice, give us a review, and help spread the word. Vertical Hold is proudly sponsored by Netcom. taking Australian technology to the global market. All right, I reckon that's a good place
Yep.
to stop.
Yep.
All right, Stephen, do you want to back off a little bit more?
Sure, mate.
Yeah, cool. Because we're going to talk footy, so you
Oh,
need
baby.
to take a step back.